Scenes such as these have kept our firefighters hard at it night and day. Scenes following the indiscriminate bombing and burning of civilian homes and other non-military objectives. We should be failing in our duty if we omitted to refer to the growing demand throughout the country for real reprisals.
Hello and welcome to Quest for Fire. This is the 4th episode, and today we'll be looking at something a little bit different from the usual. Since we'll not be looking at fire science or fire engineering, we'll be in fact looking at fire history. And here we will be looking at this document, which is the Manual of Basic Fire Training issued by the British Civil Defence in 1949. The first thing to notice, apart from the date of 1949, is that above the date it says His Majesty's Office and not Her Majesty's Office, as we have been used to hearing all of our lives. In fact, any of us born before 1952 up till now would only have known Queen Elizabeth as Queen of England. However, before her and during the war, there was King George VI. An important thing to keep in mind while we go through this manual is that firefighting still looked something like this, and technology is extremely primitive compared to what we know today. Obviously, during this video we will not be reading through the whole manual. However, if you want to read all the way through, feel free to pause the video at any point and you can read it from the screen. The first pages start by setting the context for which the manual is written. This is a post-war era where war is still very fresh in everybody's minds, and this will be highlighted in various areas of this publication. A very important issue is described right in the very beginning, and we will see it again further in the book. Here it emphasizes the importance of preparedness and the purpose of first aid firefighting, where it says, "The timely use of even minor appliances in the hands of a well-trained and resolute population is capable of turning the tide, saving untold destruction of life and property." On the next page we find a description of the burning process, from pyrolysis, the mixing of flammable vapors with air, and the combustion of such vapors. Interesting here is the use of the term tinder and kindling, which further breaks down the components of fuel. A similar description can be found in more modern publications such as the SAS Survival Handbook. Also interesting is the use of the term inflammable. Recently, inflammable is not used as much, since normally in the English language, words starting with im or in are negatives of the same word. Therefore, inflammable could be understood as not flammable. The use of the term inflammable has in fact decreased in popularity over the years, and nowadays we prefer to use other terms such as highly flammable, extremely flammable, very flammable, or similar. When the author lists common fuels in the house, we can notice the lack of plastics and electrical equipment, which nowadays make up a considerable part of the materials around us. On the next page, when a list of ignition sources is listed and explained, we need to remind ourselves of the pre-war context that the text is written in. In chapter 3, when dealing with fire prevention, the author starts by mentioning something that is still very relevant today, and any health and safety or fire safety manager will need to deal with constantly. This is the issue of housekeeping, storage and hoarding of materials, which, as the text describes, increases the fuel for a potential fire. Something I found surprising was the section about fire retardant materials, and the fact that chemicals such as sodium silicate were already in use back in those days. In the section about simple firefighting appliances, apart from the heavy reference to the wartime scenario, the author emphasizes the importance of civilians to be able to deal with emergencies themselves. Here he says, thousands of households dealt with incendiary bombs and fires in their own buildings without calling the fire brigade. The next section builds upon this, as it mentions again the importance of training and practice with firefighting equipment. When it comes to advice to industry, the author states that this is pretty much the same as households but on a larger scale. It is also added that firefighters must be able to reach each point of the premises, to arrange stock in a way to minimize spread between materials and therefore provide fire breaks, and to ensure employer knowledge and training is provided. We can find these issues tackled in modern guidance documents such as the approved document B, where issues of internal fire spread and access and facilities to the fire service are provided. Chapter 4 tackles escape and rescue from burning buildings. Some noteworthy points are made here at the very beginning, where the author explains the limited protection offered by the placement of a wet cloth over one's nose and mouth, and the method of following a wall in cases where visibility is impaired. The author continues by explaining that cooler and cleaner air will be found in the lower layers of a burning room, but then carries on by going through some escape methods that are only acceptable because of the wartime situation the publication is written in. Nowadays, methods of jumping from windows or using ropes or knotted sheets are no longer considered as acceptable, but are replaced by early warning and protected fire routes. Next we see instructions on how to search a room when visibility is low. We can see that the exact same method is still used today. Not only that, but we can also see that the exact same image is being used in today's manuals. The method used to check behind doors during a fire has also not changed. Chapter 5 tackles firefighting equipment. The main equipment mentioned are buckets of water, buckets of dry sand, and stirrup pumps. With regards to buckets of sand, it seems that although these are not very much in use nowadays, when they are, the same problems are still found. This is because many people use these buckets as ashtrays and to throw cigarette butts and random items of waste. Stirrup pumps are hand-operated pumps and would have been operated as seen in the photo. These are of course no longer in use and have been replaced by fire extinguishers and fire hose reels. When describing portable fire extinguishers, the author seems not to favor these too much. But again, we need to remember that these were very primitive models compared to what we have today. Here the author lists a number of disadvantages. Among these disadvantages are the need to refill the extinguisher after every use, and therefore it not being readily available for multiple repeated uses as might be necessary during an attack. The relative expense when compared to stirrup pumps, and also comments about their weight. Here we find a comment that might not have been accepted for publishing today, where the author says, women would find them too heavy. Chapter 6 gives information about approaching and attacking a fire. The closing of doors and windows and the removal of combustible materials is mentioned, but an emphasis is put on keeping oneself safe while doing so. This is explained by the part where it says, as many doors, windows and other openings must be closed as is consistent with a safe line of retreat. Any combustible materials in the vicinity of the fire must be removed as opportunity offers. Chapter 7 is a very short chapter with a few firefighting tips. Most of these have already been covered in the earlier parts of the book. We can comment on point number 8 where it says, attack fire at closest possible range. I'm not exactly sure about the reason for this, but it might be because of the equipment they had available. Nowadays we normally recommend to start attacking the fire from as far as your equipment allows you to, and then to only get closer if you need to. Point 13 mentions phosphorus. This is another reminder that here we are dealing with fire as a weapon of war and not fires of an accidental nature. Chapter 8, titled Elementary Firefighting Experiences in Wartime, we find, as the author puts it, a selection of wartime experiences in elementary firefighting. All are taken from official reports and each proves that training and constant practice are required to make effective firefighting. You may want to pause the video here to read through the text. The last two pages are Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. These are training drill instructions for working with stirrup pumps. Although the equipment has changed, anyone familiar with modern firefighting drills will quickly recognize the sequence and pattern of the exercises as well as some terms used from the fire service manual still used today.